Media coverage of the Atlanta shooter has highlighted issues of anti-Asian prejudice in America and the abuse of women. Sometimes it's also noted the shooter's church upbringing and how he claimed to be motivated by a desire to destroy the sources of his temptation. Anti-Asian prejudice in the US is not a new thing. My brother's wife in California is from China, but until 1948, marriage between whites and people of Asian descent was illegal in California. As for anti-Asian Bible interpretation in the US, one need only consider treatment of the kings of the East in Revelation 16:12. Over a century ago, many Western interpreters viewed these kings as the Turks. Even the revelation was originally addressed to churches in Turkey. After the breakup of the Turkish Ottoman Empire at the end of World War I, a popular interpretation was that they represented Imperial Japan. After World War II, interpreters settled on Communist China, comparing Revelation's Great Red Dragon. In the 1990s, they suddenly became Saddam Hussein. What at least most of these interpretations share in common is a fear of Asian countries and Asian rulers. But we need to separate such prejudicial interpretation from the Bible itself. Every or nearly every writer of the Bible was ethnically Asian, growing up in the Middle East, or by division of continents we've inherited in the West from the Greeks, Western Asia. Most of the Bible took place in Western Asia or Northeast Africa. In subsequent centuries, the church was established in Western Asia and East Africa long before it was established in the Northern Europe, from which most of my own ancestors descend. As for the misogynistic use of Scripture, Beth Moore has recently and rightly exposed that evil publicly, and many have complained about it, including myself, for such a long time that it may not merit much comment. It's kind of obvious that people have used the Bible that way. What merits more comment is the shooter's reported idea that he had to eradicate the cause of lust, since Jesus actually did teach about the subject of lust. So, yes, I can say something about that. Yet what Jesus taught is the exact opposite of what the shooter allegedly thought Jesus taught. Widespread non-Jewish values in the Roman Empire viewed lust as normal and healthy, but free males commonly sexually exploited others, both women and boys. Many ancient Jewish texts warn against being seduced by women's beauty, and conservative Judean culture required women to cover their heads to avoid causing male lust. In Matthew 5:28, Jesus places the responsibility for sexual purity not on the object of desire, not in that example on the woman being reduced to a sex object, but on the desirer, the one thinking of her in those terms. Jesus says, whoever looks on a woman to desire to sleep with her doesn't blame the woman. In context, Jesus is explaining how God's law goes for the heart, not simply you shall not kill, Matthew 5:21, but you shall not even want to kill, 5:22. Not only shall you not commit adultery, 5:27, but you shall not want to commit adultery. He's not saying, if you're going to lust, you may as well indulge fully, or if you're going to be angry, you may as well kill. That's the opposite of what he's saying. He's saying, don't reduce other human beings to sex objects, rather than persons in God's image of dignity equal to that of your own. In fact, Jesus is continuing another Jewish teaching from earlier in the Bible. The seventh of the Ten Commandments says, you shall not commit adultery. But the 10th of the Ten Commandments says, you shall not covet. That is, you shall not desire to have your neighbor's spouse or property or anything else that belongs to your neighbor. The Greek translation for covet, used with regard to this commandment, is exactly the word that Jesus uses when he says not to look on someone to desire them sexually. Don't want to sleep with your neighbor's wife or your neighbor's husband. The commandment is not speaking about respecting beauty or pretending that we lack biological passion. It's speaking about respecting others and their relationships and not being greedy as if others are there only for our own benefit. It's not about the spark that lights up in our brain when our eyes see something that we experience as pleasant, such as a healthy athlete's fitness, the face of a good friend, or a majestic sunset. It's certainly not talking about not enjoying the beauty of our own spouse. It goes back to what Jesus regards as a summary of all the commandments, or most of the commandments, the human word commandments. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. Someone that treats one's neighbor as of worth equal to oneself is not going to treat them as a sex object for their own gratification. And now, to those who like to criticize the Bible because of the way some people abuse the Bible, grow up. You know very well that anybody can quote any of us or any writing outside its context. People today thrive on sound bites out of context and so misrepresent what others say and think all the time. It's exactly the same when people do that with the Bible. It's not the Bible's fault that people twist it outside its literary and historical context. But now to my fellow Christians who don't take time to read and learn the Bible in its context, rather than simply verses here and there. Context really matters. That includes both what it says around those verses and the historical setting those passages address. Please, please, please get the context in matters such as slavery, misogyny, the kings of the East, or even the meaning of lust. It eventually often makes a difference between life and death.